yourself in one of those nightmare situations where you dream that you have come to a conference but you've got the wrong speech and you have no alternative but to deliver it. Because I'm coming from a different world, I'm afraid. I'm coming from a world of the 6 countries to the east, which are in the Eastern Partnership, and there these debates are not really present. I mean, there people, if they're nice, and usually the nicest people, pro-Europeans, they want to join the European Union because they think, because they can't hear this debate, they think they would find themselves in a normal world, and then there are others who don't, and then there's Russia, which is standing over the bridge. Basically, I just wanted to talk about the relationship between these countries and the European parties, more or less, in the European Union. So you've heard which countries these are, the 6 Eastern European countries. They are in the Eastern Partnership. It started in 2009. And it has reached the point where association agreements have been signed with 3, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. And these agreements assume that these countries will introduce and implement around 80% of the EU's acquis into their legal system. This will bring them to within grasping distance of membership. And that it's a massive task. And even though the association agreements which they signed last year with the European Union explicitly give them the right to apply to join the European Union, the EU institutions, the member states and the Commission are refusing at Eastern Partnership Summit in Riga next month to put this promise of membership into the final conclusions. I know that Latvia, which isn't here at the moment, was arguing that maybe this promise of membership or mention of membership should be into the conclusions, but the External Action Service and the member states said no. And this is part of a general atmosphere not to annoy the Russians about anything, and also afraid of enlargement fatigue in the European Union member states. However, there is a European EU rhetoric in this process, and the key words are democracy, the rule of law, and free markets. And in reality, the European Union seems to take the free markets part as the most important. The rule of law is taken into account because it's assumed that you can't have inward investment if there isn't a good legal system which will protect investors. And democracy is seen as being too difficult to introduce from outside, and it's actually not mentioned in the documents. The latest documents don't mention democracy. They do have gender equality has entered into these documents, but not democracy. But for democracy, the role of the European political parties, the European Parliament and the parliamentary assemblies of the Council of Europe and the OSCE is worth mentioning. The European parties tend to, and I'm sorry, oh yes, there is.
Yeah.
Thank you. The European parties tend to behave like family, call themselves families, and like all families, they like to have children and relatives and lots of partners, and they look for these partners and families abroad. So they go to the Eastern European countries and look for like-minded politicians there. And if they are not like-minded, then they will take them anyway as partners. And then they have meetings of Euronest, which is the European Parliament group, which brings together parliamentarians from the Eastern Partnership countries in the European Parliament. And they coordinate their positions within their families. But they don't look too closely at who from these parties they are talking to, if they are honest or corrupt or Democrats or not so democratic. The main thing is to have them there. There was a good example in Armenia in the last presidential election in which ODIHR, a marvelous institution, the Council of Europe's election monitoring organization, which we must all support. ODIHR said that this election was not fair. And the official results, in which the incumbent President Serge Sargsyan from the Republicans won, and he had an official result of 62% against a strong challenge from Rafi Hovhannisyan from the Heritage Party, who got 34% officially. I think that the Heritage Party got much more. Soon after the results were declared, the late Wilfried Martins, the then head of the EPP, wrote a strong letter of congratulations to Sargsyan, congratulating him on his victory, as the Republicans were an EPP partner party. Another much less enthusiastic letter went to the Heritage Party candidate, Sargsyan, because he was also an EPP partner, and poor old Wilfried Martins had to decide who he was going to congratulate, the winner or the loser, and he chose the winner. There was no mention of any irregularities in the book by Martins. Needless to say, these letters did not go down well, especially with the young people who were at the time protesting that the results had been fixed. They were protesting against the election observers. They always had placards saying, finish with this electoral tourism, you stop lying about our elections. Because indeed there is a problem with election observation by member state politicians. These politicians do not have a high opinion of ODIHR, whom they look down on as people who are technicians of elections, but don't really understand electoral politics, as they have never really stood in an election. Often the verdicts on elections clash, and the politicians accuse the technicians of getting it wrong. But the truth is that it is usually ODIHR, which is becoming a very professional organisation which gets it right. But the politicians continue to stand by their tribal loyalties. I think there's an echo of this in this business with Hungary and the EPP. The EPP, for example, was fiercely, or is still fiercely loyal to Mikhail Saakashvili in Georgia, when many honest people in Georgia were desperate to see the back of Saakashvili. The EPP stayed very, very loyal to Yulia Tymoshenko in fighting to get her released from her prison cell. But as things have turned out, since the situation was more complicated than that. There are also politicians in this whole election observation business. There are politicians who have been bribed in one way or another by unscrupulous tyrants such as President Ilham Aliyev in Azerbaijan. And these politicians regularly declare that every successive election in Azerbaijan was a little better than the last one. Not all have been bribed. I did put in some are plain stupid, but I crossed that out, so that I'm not saying that they're plain stupid. Not all have been bribed. Some argue that we, the West, have to support Aliyev because he is, one, a bulwark against A, Russia, B, radical Islam. Just, by the way, Anna Mamadi, a member of the Civil Society Forum, which I represent, and an election monitor, received 4.5-year prison sentence after he declared the last presidential election in Azerbaijan was not fair. Now, this behavior by Western politicians on the way they look at politics in the Eastern Partnership is bringing European parliamentary institutions into disrepute. These institutions no longer enjoy the trust of liberal-minded people in the EAP countries. And this is the point. Originally, we thought that by getting involved in these institutions, like getting the Eastern Partnership countries, like Azerbaijan, getting them involved in the Council of Europe, getting them doing election observation, working with them together, we could teach them about democracy. Instead, they have learned that we can be bought with bribes. This does no service to our democratic rhetoric. There's a very good study, I think maybe everyone knows this, done by the European Stability Initiative called Caveat Diplomacy, about the way people are bought by the Azeris. These examples of non-democratic behavior by member state parties does not bode well for the future. When at some point in the future these countries do or might join the European Union, they will bring their corrupt habits with them. But also the conviction that their partners in the European Union are just the same. I think I'll end there, although if we had lots of time, I would talk about the kind of threats to democracy, liberal democracy coming from our part of the world, but I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you.